Instructional design interviews can be stressful and anxiety inducing, and how you respond to the questions during the interview can make the difference between getting the job and spending months or years on the market without much success. So that's why in this video, I'm going to help you prepare well for the interview so that you not only feel less anxious, but also have a much better shot at getting hired. A lot of people prepare for interviews by looking over their resumes to make sure they know what's on there, and maybe doing some light research of the company by looking at the company's website and seeing what it is that they're all about. And while this kind of prep can help, there is actually a lot more preparation that you could be doing to help connect the dots for the hiring manager between your past experience and the needs and demands of the role that you're applying to. So one of the best ways to connect these dots is with the STAR method. Now, you've probably heard of this, but getting practice with this and preparing responses to all of the common questions with the STAR method is going to change the game for you when it comes to interviewing, and it's going to help you land a lot more offers. So to help you out with this, we're going to dive deep into STAR in this video so that you feel a lot more comfortable with it. And we've also prepared a template with almost 20 of the most common ID interview questions, and it kind of all set up in the STAR format for you to help you brainstorm and refine your responses so that you're very, very prepared going into interview day. So you can grab that template with the link below. And I'm also going to turn it over to Joanna so that you can hear more about Joanna's experience going from not having much interview experience to getting really, really good at interviewing and then securing multiple offers from household brand companies and accepting a really good ID role at Amazon Web Services. So I'm going to turn it over to Joanna, and I'll see you right after that.
So when I first started interviewing, I was really nervous, and I was kind of taking a more generic approach to the interview prep process. And the first interview that I had did not go well. So there was a lot of anxiety and nerves that kind of stemmed from that first bad experience. So I started putting in more time and realized that it was going to take a lot more prep. I ended up putting in about 50 to 60 hours, and I decided to restructure my approach and focus on STAR. And I found that once I started doing that, putting in the time and structuring my responses through the STAR format, that I saw a lot more success.
Okay, so we know that STAR helps, and make sure you download that template and take the time to actually prepare your responses with the help of this video so that your next interview can go a lot more smoothly. So let's dive into it. To start things off, I do have a question for you. If you were faced with this question in an interview, how would you respond? So what are your favorite instructional design theories? Now, possible response is to start listing the theories and why you like them. So, oh yeah, Addy is great for this reason. Gagne's is wonderful, so on and so forth. But of course, as you've probably guessed by now, there is a much better way, and that is by responding with the STAR format. So it's an interview approach that stands for situation, task, action, and result. So it's like a nice structured framework for responding to each and every question that requires you to tell a story about yourself. And even some that don't, like this favorite ID learning theories question, you can actually use stories in this format to build your credibility and show that you have experience with the needs of the job. So like I just said, it helps tell a story about the actions you took and the results you produced in the past. And this is going to go very far in helping build your credibility with the roles that you're applying to. It's kind of like show, don't tell. Instead of, oh yeah, I love Addy because I used it so much, you're actually going to tell a story about how you used one of your favorite learning theories to build your credibility. So great approach for behavioral interviews or interviews in general. But for behavioral interviews especially, this is going to serve you really well. So let's dive into it. So first up, we have situation, and I'm going to give you examples too for each of these. So this is where you give us context and set the scene that, give us the context we need to understand the rest of your response. Keep it concise, avoid jargon from previous roles. Like if you were in a teaching role, we don't want to use teaching jargon here. We want to make sure it's nice and easy to for the person interviewing us to understand the context. We don't want to bore them. So concision is good here. So here's an example. So we could start things off by giving the context. When I was a high school English teacher, I had to apply instructional design theories all the time to the learning experiences that I was creating. And you can see with this context, when we're setting the situation, we're saying, yeah, we were a high school English teacher, but we also had to apply ID theories. So we were doing that work and we were creating learning experiences. Notice, again, this is just a small example of how we're using the language of instructional design and corporate e-learning as opposed to some more education-specific jargon or language. So there we go. We set the context. We're seeming like we know what we're talking about. We're using ID theories. That's a good sign. Next up, the next part of the response is talking about the task. So this is where you describe what the task at hand was. Okay, so it's going to take some brainstorming. It's going to take some thinking through your past experience, but we want to identify all of this beforehand so that you can prepare for it and be ready when these kind of questions are asked in interviews. So for the task, in other words, what was the goal you wanted to achieve or the problem you wanted to solve? Like what was needed of you is essentially what we're asking here. What was the goal? So for example, again, we have our question, we have a summary of that situation we set out previously. But now the task is halfway through the year, I had to take over another teacher's class and there were hardly any lesson plans for me to work with. I knew that I needed something quick, but I didn't want to sacrifice learner engagement. So that's the task. We had to take over a class. We didn't have any lesson plans. We needed to do something. So that's what you're trying to outline with the task. You're trying to let us know, what did we have to do? What was the situation we were dealing with here? Next up, we have the action. And this is where you actually lay out the actions you took to complete the task. So we want this to be very active. We want it to highlight your role in things. It's where you highlight what you did specifically to complete it, not what the organization did. This is where you're highlighting your role, your capabilities as a professional. So back to our example, we have our question, our situation, our task, and here's our action. I knew that Gagne's events were perfect for designing comprehensive learning experiences in a structured way, so I built a template and used that to guide my learning design. So that's the action. Build a template, use it to guide the design. And obviously that's going to help save time and develop those lesson plans more quickly, which is the task we laid out previously. So you see how it all builds on itself. We're giving more and more information and building the case for what we were capable of. Finally, the most important one is the result. This is the last letter of STAR. So this is where you talk about the outcome. What outcome did your actions produce, right? What did you achieve? What impact did you make? And there are different ways to approach this. The gold standard is, of course, to quantify your experience. Talk about what metrics this moved at an organizational level. That's not always possible. And I'm going to turn it back over to Joanna to talk about some other options that she incorporated into her interviewing, which worked really well. But first, let's just see how this example comes together. So question, situation, task, action. Here's the result. The template helped me design learning experiences 50% more quickly, and some of these lessons were received better by the students than the ones I took more time on. Seeing the power of Gagne's events made it one of my favorite ID theories. So imagine how differently this response would be received than, oh yeah, I really enjoy Addy. Addy is great. Or yeah, Gagne's events are like super cool and they save a lot of time. We're giving the specific context needed. We're building our credibility as someone who applies these theories and has applied these theories in the past. And we're making a case for why we like this specific one so much with a very specific example that produced real results to solve a real world need at that past role. So if you could respond to all of these behavioral questions with stories like this to build this case for yourself, it's going to make you look very, very credible and skilled. But another thing about the results, it's hard. It's hard to think of the results. That's what a lot of people struggle with. And that's not a part you want to struggle with because that is one of the highest impact parts of STAR. So you might not have those numbers or metrics available to you, but there is another way. And again, I'm going to turn it over to Joanna, who handled this very, very well.
Yeah, so you definitely don't need hard numbers for your results. I know I certainly didn't. What you can do is talk about qualitative feedback. So that might just mean looking at learner feedback, and hearing positive stories or negative stories about your learning experiences and talking to the interviewer about how you would have adjusted your learning experiences based on that feedback. You can also talk about what you would do if you could, do that again and how you would collect feedback in the future, whether that's through surveys or focus groups, but just kind of letting the interviewer know that you are results driven and that you're trying to always think about that when creating learning experiences in the future.
So there we have it. If you enjoyed learning from Joanna, there's a lot more content from her on the channel where she dives into her approach and her journey in instructional design. So make sure to check that out. But otherwise, it's your turn now. So download that template below if you haven't already and try to write responses in the STAR format to each of these 20 or so interview questions that we have on that template. If you take the time to do this, if you memorize these responses at least to some degree and you practice them, you are going to start seeing a big difference in the amount of offers you receive compared to the amount of interviews that you're completing. So check it out. Let us know what you think with the link in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.